The Washington Post on Saturday, this past weekend, headlined "Silence in the Eye of the Rushdie Storm. Fear has swept the North American literary and publishing establishment in the wake of Ayatollah Khomeini's death sentence on novelist Salman Rushdie, author of the Satanic Verses." Even talked about Canada barring importation of the books. Do you want to characterize any of that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I know that a lot of people who will, in the ordinary way, when it's some imprisoned Czechoslovakian playwright like Václav Havel, who's actually on trial this week, or someone in Chile or South Africa or Poland, will, automatically sign. There's a list, everyone sort of knows it, people you can call, famous American writers who will put their names to defense of the freedom of others not so fortunate. In this case, some of these people decided to pass. And some of them, one of them is quoted in that story, said it was because they were frightened. And for me, the most depressing moment of reading that story was when Arthur Miller said that. And Arthur Miller was a hero to many of us when we were young, before we were writers, because of his tremendous bravery in the face of the McCarthy hearings. And the play that he wrote, and the plays and books that he's written on the theme of free expression. That he should say that he is scared to associate with a protest where a writer's life has been directly threatened, and where his books are being burned, and the threat is that he will be burned too, it just makes me very sad. Now, the same justification I don't think applies to bookstores like B. Dalton and Walden Books, who pulled the book from their shelves, deprived Americans of the chance to read the book for themselves. That's a merely commercial consideration. They haven't been threatened. They aren't. No one's asked to go on TV and show their face and say, give the Ayatollah the lie and say, all right, I don't care what you think. I prefer to exercise my rights. And then we have, sorry to drone on, Bruce, but just one final thing before we say. I think it's been very sad that the religious leaders of the country have been so feeble. They've all either said nothing, or, as in the case of Cardinal Archbishop O'Connor of New York, have said they think the book is blasphemous. And they've, as it were, directed their criticism at their book, instead of calling the Ayatollah Khomeini a blasphemer for using religion to mount a contract killing, which is what he's publicly done. So that's my take, since you asked.
All right, and we've got you here in part because you wrote this column that appeared in the Friday edition of the New York Times, Now Who Will Speak for Rushdie? What's the reaction you've gotten to this column?
Well, nice of you to ask. I mean, it shouldn't be me who says, but actually the response was very positive. I think a lot of people have rung me from around the country saying it's what they wanted to read, which pleased me very much. I think, look, the piece is full of cliches. I say all the obvious stuff, all the things that we take in with our milk. Freedom of expression, freedom from fear, and so on. But there are certain days when cliches come alive, and I apparently was lucky to publish my cliches on Friday, because Friday last, because that was when people wanted to read them.
Youngstown, Ohio. First call for Christopher Hitchens. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. I would like to address myself first of all. I am a Muslim, but I don't adhere to the Khomeini doctrine of Islam. My question is, even though I believe in the absolute freedom of expression by anybody, there is always a fine line where a sensible, intellectual, and educated person like Salman Rushdie should really recognize. Secondly, freedom of speech does not allow anybody to be also extremist to the extent that he insults 1 billion Muslims. The second comment I would like to address the host of this program. I've been seeing this program for a long time and I admire it very much. But so far, every time there is an issue between Arab and Israelis or Muslim and non-Muslim, you never ever bring to your program anybody represent the other view. If there is really freedom of speech and you believe in it, you should adhere yourself to it and you should allow the other side to present their view. All your guests so far, they were representing the opposite view. Why don't you allow us? We are 8 million Muslims in America. We have a right to be represented in your program, and we have many Muslim scholars. They would like to present their view in your program.
All right, sir, thank you. I'll respond to that after we hear from Mr. Hitchens.
There's a mistake at the heart of what you say, sir. You say that though you are for free speech, you aren't for the exercise of free speech if it offends Muslims, and you say that that is the line that we draw. As a matter of fact, you're in error. First Amendment to the Constitution allows anyone who wants to insult anyone they like, in any way they choose. That includes belief in religion, which is especially given no particular protection by that amendment, which is, in fact, rightly described as the cornerstone of our liberty. Now, that's just the fact of the matter. I can say what I like about your religion, and you can say what you like about my humanism, and I will not attempt to prevent you from doing that. In fact, so far from that, I would defend anyone who tried to make you be silent. That is the foundation of what we call the Enlightenment. It's terrible to have to be saying this, because it's ABC, but there it is. Now, to your point about the insult, I have read the book, I don't know if you have, and I'm clear in my mind that no insult to the Prophet or to those who believe in the God of whom he's the messenger is intended. The words that are complained of are spoken by a sick man suffering from paranoid schizophrenia in a dream in which he believes himself to be the Archangel Gabriel, who is a Christian icon. So I think that's about as far fictionally as you could go to avoid the charge of blasphemy. But I must add that if Salman Rushdie had wished to be blasphemous, had wished to challenge the tenets of your faith, that would also be his right. So don't confuse me in giving you two answers. I mean them to be separate but related.
And to the caller, I would say that we make every effort here to have a balanced presentation of all issues. I'm certain, I know that we've had representatives from the Arab and the Muslim worlds, both paid lobbyists, as it were, and other journalists and the like. Perhaps you'd prefer to see a greater proportion than we've had on, or you've simply missed the ones that we've had on. In either case, I urge you to keep watching, and you will see over the course of time a balanced presentation on this and all the other issues that come up for discussion on this program. Tulsa, Oklahoma is next. Go ahead, please.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to know why has it taken so long for the U.S. government to respond to Iran's statements of killing Rushdie, and what do you think the United States will do to Iran for this, if anything's going to be done?
Well, it certainly is true that the first statement made by Secretary of State Baker was fantastically weak. I mean, he said that he thought the murder threat was regrettable, which is, I don't see really that you could have chosen a more feeble word than that. President Bush today has, I think, said intolerable, which is an improvement, but not an enormous one. For the United States, there are two problems. One is you have no diplomats anymore in Iran, no one to withdraw, unlike the European countries. Unlike the European countries, you have no ministerial visits that you can cancel that are in preparation. Actually, things could barely be worse. Plus, there are American hostages in the custody of people supposedly pro-Iranian and probably pro-Khomeini. So that's all difficult. However, I do think that something a little more daring could have been said about the founding principles of the American Republic when they're attacked in this way. After all, damage has already been done. Salman Rushdie's had to cancel his trip to the United States. That's to say, Americans have already been robbed of the chance to meet him, see him for themselves, meet him at book signings and so on. Many Americans have been deprived by other Americans, American bookseller monopolies, of the right to buy the book. In other words, we're giving ground to the Ayatollah just at the point where his regime is crumbling, his revolution is at a dead end, his credibility is in shreds, even in his own country. At just this moment, it seems to me appalling that people should start crying out before they've been hurt and giving ground to what I described before and would describe again as a foreign despot.
We have half an hour left with Christopher Hutchins. Before the next